Hello and welcome to another programme from The Late Show with me, Simone Kennedy Harding, and I've got Dave.
Good to be back.
Yeah, we're back together again.
Yeah, and we've got a great show, haven't we, tonight? I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we've got quite a hot topic tonight, and please, we really want you to write in. You always do, and we just want you to get straight in there from the get-go. And the information is on at the bottom of the screen as usual. So Dave is poised and ready with the iPad. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as I say, as Simone just said there, the information is available on the screen. Get in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you tonight. This is not our show, is it, Simone? This is a time when you can really just touch base with us and say hello as the Revelation family, and we're free to talk openly and just have a good chat about some stuff and chew the cud, as my granddad used to say.
Yeah.
So we look forward to hearing from you tonight. So do get emailing in. Don't wait till the end of the show because we've only got an hour.
Exactly.
So get on with it now. Email in. Get on with it.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear from you. Yeah.
Yeah. So tonight we're talking about the hot topic of race, heritage and culture, and I know for me that I've actually got, well, most of us have actually got a rich and diverse culture if we actually start to, deep dive and look in. There's a lot that we can find out now, especially with getting your DNA done and all kinds of things that we didn't have the opportunity for many years ago. And for me, I know quite a bit about my heritage, and I come from a mixed background that I know of, which I'm really proud of, which I'm really glad. And we want to hear from you if you've discovered things about yourself, about your heritage, about race. And this is what we're going to be talking about tonight, because it's been on the news for a while, and we're looking from a perspective of what does Jesus say, what does the church say, and from a Christian perspective, what should our response be? And I think sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes when it's a really tough subject, we either ignore it or we just don't really know what to say. And I think that we should be the ones to be able to have some kind of response.
Well, I mean, Jesus spoke about it. He spoke about his love for people and his acceptance for people, and I think we just got to not be worried. We're quite light people generally, and we like to have a laugh and a giggle, and like to keep it light. But it would be remiss of us not to talk about this at the moment because it's so much in the news, and I really think it's something that the church needs to grapple with. And what's been really, really encouraging, Simone, I know it's taken this for it to happen, but I've seen lots of church leaders in the UK, and I know we've got a few tonight that we're going to hear from, but lots of church leaders in the UK who are actually sitting down and having serious conversations and discussions about this. And actually, I can only come from a working class white family background, and that's my angle. So I'm coming at this saying, you know what, I can't fully relate to racism because I've experienced bullying. I can tell you about my bullying. I can tell you about my Irish heritage that experienced racism moving to England and how the Irish were treated, and yet I can't always fully relate to other people's stories, and that's it. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay not to relate. But it's not okay not to listen. So that's the thing. So anyway, I'm getting in preaching mode again.
We're getting it. No, but I think this is good because I think the thing is sometimes, like I said before, we shy away from dialogue, and we should be able to talk about things. And as a family, we should be able to dig deeper. And I think sometimes, conversations might get a bit rough, but like what you said, it's about being willing to listen to what people have got to say. So it's not about saying to someone, yep, I understand everything you've gone through on whatever issue that is, but it's about empathy, and it's about saying, but I want to hear, I want to understand, share more. And I think if we do that just generally, and obviously especially about this topic, I think that's what helps people. We've
got an email. Do you want to hear? So well done, Cynthia. You win the Dave and Simone T-shirt. No, you don't. But
we've got to make it first.
We'll have to make one. Dave and Simone T-shirt. That would be the worst thing you'd want, wouldn't it? Anyway, thank you, Cynthia, for this. I lived in Africa for many years. as my late husband went to work out there. We also lived in the bush where he was in charge and also helped to build a missionary hospital. I have loads of photos from black friends and orphans of that missionary. When my husband passed away, I asked for donations to go out to that missionary hospital and the orphanage. We came back to UK in 1993. My husband passed away in 2007. The thing that saddens me is this, as it makes us, the white people, look as if we are all racist, which I'm definitely not. One black person on TV said that's the first thing white people say is, I have black friends. I said that to you earlier, didn't I? I didn't say it like that, but it's one thing that we tend to lean towards, which I find as an insult to my intelligence. In God's eyes, we're all the same, no matter what colour we are. I've had black friends stay over at my home. And again, it is the fundamental thing coming from that email is that, God looks at each one of us. And for me, and we can talk about black and white, but we can talk about every race and nationality under the sun. We're all created in the image of God.
Exactly.
And even people I don't like, not racist people, people that I fall out with, I have to remind myself, you know what, they're God's people as well, even though they may annoy me sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that, that's the bottom line for us, isn't it, as believers, is that's a foundational thing, is that, God is love and God has made us in his image, and God has made differences. And I said this to someone the other day, which I know sounds really simplistic, but this is just what came to me at the time talking to this person, that God made a rainbow. And I know we hear that God made a rainbow, so he loves every colour, but what came to me about that when we were talking quite seriously is that, look, God made a rainbow is made up of differences. That's what makes it the rainbow. If you just add orange across the sky, it's not a rainbow. And so the value is all of those beautiful differences are equally beautiful, and put together, they're amazing. And so as a unit and coming together, there's a blessing, and it's great, and it's natural, and it's normal. And I think that there is the human race, and really it's only the last 400 years, without going into too many statistics, we can do another programme, that there's the racial divisions, have come into play. This is not the way that it's always been. But it's what we've now sort of become used to, Any more emails at all?
Yeah. Oh. Deb Willis says, hi, I would like to say that people trafficking is a modern slavery, and all races do it. All races, so human race is the issue. The human race is the issue. Only solution is love thy neighbour, as it really means dig deep into what that means. Peace and love. Yeah, and again, that is the thing, isn't it? Because the bottom line is, and this is a thing in which a lot of secular media is missing in this discussion, is that a lot of the world is missing Christ in their lives, and we're living in a sinful, broken world, and that is the fundamental problem in our world at the moment. Is sin.
And I think that's the thing. This is, we want the narrative within this whole situation to come from Christ's perspective. Like you said, there's the world media, but what is the voice of the church saying? And we need to have that dialogue as a body to say, okay, what are the issues in-house, so that when we present things to the world, that we have a solution, we have a strategy, that we're authentic, that we can say, okay, we understand because we're human beings that there is this issue, but you know what, we're working on that, and that as an example, and for people that becomes appealing, because people realise, okay, we're all human, but we're willing to work on stuff, we're willing to look at stuff and not shy away or not go to the other extreme, which is, becoming violent and all the rest of it. So I think it's bringing that balance and keeping Christ, at the centre of it.
Can I ask you a question now?
You can indeed.
Would you agree, and this is what because I'm coming from this perspective of I'm trying to learn, would you agree that there's kind of like two forms of racism? There's the overtly evil, in your face, obvious racism. I don't like you because of the colour of your skin, and then there's this kind of subconscious, just not having empathy towards somebody, to the point where no, you haven't set out to be racist, but you just haven't seen it from that person's point of view, and there's a kind of a subconscious thing happening which you just hadn't realised. But it is also horrible because it's.
Yeah, I think as well. I think it's important as well to differentiate between prejudice and racism. I think they're two different things, and I think that we can all, be prejudiced in the sense that we've prejudged.
Yeah.
And that could be, anybody, any people group, any situation. Well, I already prejudged you. So so you could, we've got these things that go on. Okay, by the clothes that people wear, we can assume by the car they drive that they earn this much money, they must do this much. So I think we're all fighting with that in some way or another. So I think if you sort of say to someone, if I was to say, if to a white person, you're racist, they might say that they're not, but I could say, no, you are. So I think one of the key things is there needs to be sort of like a universal definition of, so we can have communication on what we understand racism and prejudice is. If we're thinking two different things, we're going to have two different conversations. But if we know that, okay, this is what prejudice is and this is what racism is. So I would say that racism is more to do with power or the abuse of power, and which then goes into the political and economical structures, and i.e. slavery. So that's an economical and political situation. So, I think it's understanding the two different things and how they kind of
it's very complex, isn't it? It's complex to the point that even this argument could become about class as well. And how did Jesus deal with people of a different class system? And even like Marcus Rashford bringing the campaign to get free school dinners for poor kids in Manchester and the UK. So there's a whole load of things that can.
I think it's like roots into. There is actually a program called Roots. You should check that out. But where things do start to interweave, and what I think we should go to our first clip tonight. We've actually got Nicky Gumbel from Holy Trinity Brompton, and he's talking to Isaac, who is also known as Governor B. I actually know Isaac, and they're having an interesting discussion. So let's look at this. They're talking about representation in the church. So let's see what they've got to say.
The church wants to be the leader in these kind of areas. But I've just been wondering whether the church is entirely ready for that, because if the church isn't clear in its position on things like race, then we're not ready for the world to reflect the church. I've seen huge companies like Nike and Adidas be clear in their position and their standpoint. And so I think what's happening right now is a great opportunity for the church to stand and say, look, this is what we believe. We are anti-racist. We believe Black Lives Matter, and we want to do something about it.
Yeah. And then what should we do? What is the right response at this time?
It's such a massive issue that has, I guess, started about 400 years ago, Nikki, and that's what we're fighting against and battling against. So I think there's a variety of short-term, mid-term, long-term. But one thing I'd definitely say from my experience here in the UK is if the church is diverse in congregation, but isn't truly diverse in positions of leadership, in race and ethnicities and gender and classes, then that has to be looked at. I mean, we've got to understand that racism isn't just someone using the N-word, but you can perpetuate it by looking after your own, by only hiring or working with people who are within your class or your race, by not looking for opportunities to truly commit, invest, develop, and care for people who aren't like you. So I think that's a great start, to look around and say, how can we make sure that the different people that attend our services and the different people in our world are represented, not just in the seats in the church, but right at the top in leadership. I was reading the other day that 7% of the UK population attended private school, yet that 7% accounts for 74% of judges, 32% of MPs, 44% of newspaper columnists. And that's a huge disproportion. And that's not anything against anyone that went to private school, but it's saying that, are we looking for opportunities to involve people who aren't like us and who have different experiences. So representation is important. And yeah, I just think if everyone in decision-making senior positions is male and white, then it means that my experience isn't being completely understood or taken into consideration at that level. So I think that's a long-term plan for the church.
Wow, what a great clip, Dave.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think what the points that he's made are just so relevant and, you know, just expressed so well that representation, you know, is important. That if nobody sees themselves in certain positions, it's hard to picture yourself being able to do those things, because we want to. Everyone wants to aspire to do things. So representation is important. What have you experienced in church leadership?
Yeah, going back to the question I asked you earlier about some people who are overtly prejudiced or racist, and then there's a kind of the way things have always been done, and things just carry on, and we don't actually stop to appraise the situation. So I was in a church, and a great church, don't get me wrong, still, and it's a fantastic church now, but I noticed that the church was growing in the area of African people that were coming to the church. And they weren't really engaging with the church on any other program except really a Sunday. And that was something that I noticed as well. So somehow we weren't engaging with these people very well. And secondly, our leadership was white male. So two things there. One is we weren't really seeing, we had a woman pastor, but we weren't seeing any women deacons and elders coming on, although that did change over time. But we were asking the question then, and we were looking at it then about why are we all white people on this leadership? Why is it not representing really the full makeup of the church? And I'm not saying that you have to have the exact right percentage, 40% black church, so 40% leadership. I just think you got to go for the right people who God's calling. Bottom line is we're led by the Holy Spirit to ask God, who do you want as a deacon? Who do you want on the leadership? And so for me, but even then that was an issue. And I don't think anybody said, you know what, we're going to be completely white male leadership. It was just, that's the way it was from the 50s, 60s and 70s. And it's never really, it's just, that's the way it's always been done.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the, I think that's a really great point, because it's that thing of this is the way it's always been done. So it becomes, you hear these terms institutionalised or institutionalised racism or institutionalised whatever. It's a part of the system. And this is what I was saying before, about, what racism is. It's a structure, that kind of marginalises or squeezes out, that doesn't leave room. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to look at. And you've just used, the church that you went to as an example of nobody's even thinking. So actually, nobody's sort of even thinking, where is that? Empathy, where is that really kind of noticing the sheep, I don't know the pastor, so I'm not trying to criticise the pastor. But
if you were to call them out on it, they would think, "Oh, that's horrible. Why have we done this?" There was no malicious intent there. It was just an oversight. And
I think this is what I'm trying to say is that it's so woven into society that you don't even think about it. It's just, this is how it is, and I think those are the things that where there can sort of be tensions. We've got some emails.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't...
No.
Okay, so we've got great to get so many emails coming in. I'm going to try and do these really quickly because I know we've got a guest coming on in a moment. Hi, Dave and Simone. I have nothing to say. Sorry. Oh, thanks. No. I hate no one. Before I got saved, I was in contact with many types of people. What I do think in the UK, certain people are very territorial from most regions. So maybe, if you're from Yorkshire, don't like Lancashire. Sorry, I'm from up north. So me and you would have a different culture, not mainly because you're from London, which is a completely different culture to Derby.
Absolutely.
So that was a good point. But
that's a really good point.
David Berry says, "Hi, folk. I agree. We should not be racist. Take a look at the Oriel College in Oxford. They want to get rid of Cecil Rhodes' statue as he was a racist. It's mostly blacks that are protesting that come from Oriel College. Or they're going to pull the college down, especially anyway. So it's a good point." that's massive in the news at the moment about the statues, isn't it, as well? I'm going to move through these as quick as I can. Kevin McNully, hi, there is a culture of hatred in the world. This causes wounds, and then the wounds react out of these hurts. I remember John Glass saying, hurt people hurt people.
That's right.
God made us all and loves us all the same. When I was shown how much I loved, it healed my wounds, and then I saw the truth of how my hurt used to control me. I'm not going to read all these emails. I'm just going to skim these as quick as I can. There's another 3 that we'll do in a moment, maybe, but just a quick one here from Caroline. Good evening. I also think racism is not the problem, but it's a sin problem. Secondly, I believe before God deals with the government, he has to deal with the church first. One apostle said on Daystar that if church cannot come together and speak about it, then we have no business to talk about it in the streets. A really good point, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do tonight, isn't it? So keep your emails coming in.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for these emails. It's great. It's great that we can have this dialogue and we can just, do this and just in the right way. We can just be authentic. We can be real, and it's not easy. It is difficult, but I think the more that we do it, the easier it becomes. And we've got a fantastic guest that's coming on the show right now. It's actually a good friend of mine. I know people say that a lot, but I do actually. He is actually a good friend of mine. Friends. Him is lovely. I've got friends, and we'd like to welcome you, Anthony.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey. Anthony,
we are real life friends, not showbiz friends.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, not air kisses. I know nobody
social
can.
Distancing.
Social distancing.
Yeah, obviously, from a distance, England and Spain.
Exactly, but it's so good to have you on tonight. And you've been in ministry. You're an actor. You're a presenter. What don't you do? So
I'm not great in the kitchen, but I'm learning.
Well, we know you've got a beautiful and amazing wife. Not just suggesting that she's just in the kitchen, because she does so many amazing things as well.
You're digging a hole now, aren't you?
Oh, it's the kids. All right, okay, that's a whole nother topic. Yeah. But no, I'm so glad that you come on the show tonight, because I think that just want to hear, we've what Dave and I have been speaking about and what we've shared so far, but also you've got quite an interesting story as well, that you were transracially adopted. So and we were talking before as well about representation within churches, and obviously you've been in ministry, and just to hear your experiences on all those things. So yeah.
No pressure. Well, okay, so I think if I talk about off the back of the VT, that was great. And I also know, as we're friend dropping, I also know Isaac. Yeah. We used to work together at Premier Radio and stuff like that, so who knew? Yeah. I think that there is something very important what he said about representation. I think sometimes people misunderstand it as favoritism, or almost like when there was affirmative action, forcibly putting people in positions that they don't deserve, they're not qualified for. And it's not that at all. It's the very simple fact that human beings, we are tribal, birds of a feather flock together. Yeah. And the problem is, what if I don't belong to your particular group, and your particular group happens to be at the top table running everything? You may not even think about it in the forefront of your mind, but you will just pass the responsibilities through to people that you relate to, that you may play golf with, you may have the same accent, the same education, and those things bind you together naturally, but it also freezes other people out. So I think there is something about when it comes to racism, that is magnified. The idea that certain individuals, you may have no contact with them outside of the news. And what if you're watching the news and a certain group of people are always portrayed as committing crimes, black on black crime, or they're heavily policed? Then that can create a perception, as you don't know anybody in those circles, that is the way that they are. And you may know one person of that particular ethnic group, and they're like, my friend, I love them, but I'm not sure about the rest of them. So you get that kind of thing. As pertains to church, I've been in diverse churches. I predominantly spent time in the black church as a minister, but I also moonlighted in both diverse white majority Bible college and in a church that was white leadership, but a large black congregation. And maybe we'll go into that later, but I find that there were teething problems, because often a church may be multi-ethnic, that's people of different ethnicities and backgrounds, but not multicultural, i.e. the music was all CCM, contemporary Christian music. The leadership structure was white, the sermons, the reference points. And as for myself, you know, many Black people, we can congregate together and trade stories, right? You know, sometimes they're war stories and, problems that we faced. And you come home or you gather together. In my situation, I grew up in a loving family who happened to be white. So when I came home after maybe some challenges in the day as a child, I was still the Black one in my home. So that created some interesting challenges. And, you know, there was a lot of love, but at the same time, I think Tina Turner said sometimes, what's love got to do with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we always like to put a reference of Tina into situations.
Yeah. You know what, that was simply the best quote. Yeah. So, anyway.
Oh, well.
Can I just ask you a question? And, Anthony or Tony, it's been great to get to know you tonight. And I wanted to ask your view on kind of when government says that a certain industry has to have a quota of certain people from a different background, how you feel about that. And also, I know even when I was pastoring in the UK that we were told that, you know, you need to hire the right person for the job, and there might not be a Christian, which means you might not have a Christian running your Sunday school, which just seemed very strange. But that kind of policies that were coming in, how do you feel about that from your perspective?
I think personally, I would want to be hired because I am the best person for the job on merit. That is my personal preference, and that's the ideal. However, there are systems that are in play that have kind of made the pool of people who would be the best ones very small. I think Isaac referenced private school. Again, nothing wrong with private school. I'd certainly send my kids. Why not have some, you know, advantages of a great education? Yeah. But the problem is there's a very small sample of elite that get to go through certain processes, who get to be the decision makers and get to ultimately be the gatekeepers. And guess what? They're letting other people of the similar background in through the gate, and people that may be from certain demographics who are very smart and have aptitude may not even get on the short list. And I think the problem there is that certain systems were created and designed to, you know, separate people from others. I suppose it's like a survival of the fittest, the wheat from the goats. Not my view, but the way it would have been conceived. So I think there's a danger there of being naive and thinking that the way the system works currently is all about the best person for the job, where actually it's about giving your mate sometimes a leg up, or coming from the right family, the right background. So I think there may need to be a pendulum swing the other way to make society more fairer. But I think we would all just want the best person to get the job, whatever the background, whether they came like me, grew up working class on a council estate, or they graduated from Oxbridge. I think there should be a more robust way of finding the right person and not going to the usual suspects.
Yeah, I think that's a... did you want to say anything?
No, I was going to also say that I suppose...
Sense?
Yeah.
For you and for others in a similar situation, have you ever felt like there is that kind of, we call it a glass ceiling, but obviously you are doing things which maybe you would never dream you were going to end up doing. So you're following your dream, you're able to do that. And would you say that's not the case for everybody?
It's not the case for everyone. I was having a conversation with a group of brothers the other day, and they mentioned, like, in the 80s when we had Eddie Murphy, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, you know, Michael Jordan, these exceptional, Oprah Winfrey, exceptional black luminaries. Yeah. But the problem is that maybe gave the impression that things were changing. But you're always going to have exceptional people from whatever background. And I think even having Obama, he's an exceptional person. You have to be pretty exceptional to become president of the United States. So I kid, I jest. So the reality is, though, is that majority of us are not super exceptional, and no matter what our mums say, and we're not in a situation where we have access to great resources. So I think the median needs to have more opportunity, and that opportunity needs to spread out across a wider demographic. There are many people within the Black community who have a ton of talent, but unfortunately, in some ways, they've been groomed to be in certain arenas, almost career ghettos, you know, sports, music. Oh, you guys sing so well. You guys play basketball so well. And even sometimes the school system, there are studies that have shown that Black children are often perceived to be less intelligent than they are in the classroom. So sometimes they play the fool because they're seen to be dumb and not very academic. But when they've been marked independently outside of the school, they get flying colours, they get A's and they get top marks. So that suggests, and there was reports on this that suggest that perception can feed into how people get those opportunities and those jobs, especially in those formative years.
Yeah, I think it's and that's great. You know, Anthony, what you're saying there, and you know, you're talking about the formative years, and you know, how did you? I was going to ask you, you know, when did you notice that there was anything different between you and your adoptive parents when you were growing up?
Yeah, I did stand up for a little bit, and I remember doing a part of my routine. And again, all of these stories will be in my book. Plug. Coconut Prince.
Oh,
available on Amazon.
What's that book? Could you tell us what the book is?
It's called Coconut Prince, and it's all of my journey through transracial adoption, looking for my mother, finding faith, masculinity, becoming a man, you know, grief, bereavement, and my Hollywood dreams, and ultimately how my identity in Jesus kind of transformed everything. But before I plug and get into that a bit more.
And you've got a Netflix series coming out on his life.
Yeah, Netflix show, all that stuff.
We're prophesying that. We're prophesying, yeah.
I did a bit of comedy for a while, and I did a sketch, and I remember mentioning when I was a child, asking my mum why I'm brown and why I'm different and she's white. And she said, I asked God for a brown baby, which actually was a true story. I won't get into the rest of the routine, the setup and the punch. And I was probably about 3, and I just remember going, oh, well, and went off watching the A-Team. You know, I wasn't particularly, and that's the thing, it was the unspoken in my house for many years, where I had a mum and dad, they happened to be white. Then I realized my best mate, who was biracial, his mum was white, the dad wasn't around, and I thought, well, you know, but then I started meeting other people, kids in school who matched their parents. Yeah. You know, I felt like a mismatched pair of socks. But the love was there, but I remember feeling very paranoid and feeling like, I am in this very unique, different situation. And there used to be a show called Different Strokes. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I used to think it was a spy camera in my house. You know, like I was secretly Arnold, but I didn't have a Willis. Yeah. So I wish I'd had a Willis, because I felt very isolated and alone in that situation, because you know, I had no one to look like. There was nobody that looked like me. I was the only Black member of my family. And when people say, oh, you know, don't matter about color. And of course, there's a degree of that, which I get it. But I think that made me feel a bit naive, because in my home, color wasn't an issue, but in the rest of the world, it was.
Yeah.
Well, Simone, I think he's a bit older than us, because I've never heard of these programmes, have you?
Yeah, I didn't want to say, Dave. I didn't want to say. I just thought, we'll just you know, make you feel happy. But I so relate to that in what you're saying, in terms of, you know, thank God that there is love. And one of the things I think that used to frustrate me a bit, you know, is that when people will say wouldn't really understand how I felt about, you know, being different. And they would say, oh, well, colour doesn't matter. So then it makes you feel like, well, you don't matter, because obviously you are a particular shade, you know. And really, you know, when people begin to understand that whatever shade you are is due to the amount of melanin that you have actually in your skin. But that's a whole nother topic, which most people don't know. So,
even perception, like my family were white working class who raised me, and they were beautiful, wonderful people. Unfortunately, I lost my mum 25 years ago and my dad 20 years ago. They were quite elderly. But the irony is, when I did find my biological family, which, spoiler alert, I found out I came from a very affluent family. But growing up, people would say things like, isn't it so good they took you in? Like I was a puppy. like a stray dog.
Yeah.
And the assumption was I was this poor stray African kid who's had this benevolence, where actually, you know, and I don't mean it's in any shade, I have a very affluent, like, I'm the only one in my family, usually is probably not a doctor or a lawyer. I'm the one who's slumming it in my biological family.
Right.
That's a good point, I think you make, Simone, because I think sometimes I've heard people say, "Oh, I don't see colour."
Yeah.
As if, like, you know, and that's and I understand what they're saying, because they're saying, you know, I don't think of you as a black person. I think of you as my friend Simone.
Yes. Yeah.
Yet that kind of then says
you're not
celebrating who you are in your culture. So
that's right. Yeah.
Help me here, Tony. It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Simone, like, we've talked about this, you know, privately, that I kind of can relate to Simone for the biracial experience, even though I'm black. Because I was black, but I was in a white family, and then I was around socially other black people as I got older. And there is this thing where people think it's a nice thing to say, and I think it's often said by well-meaning white people, because here's the thing, whiteness is the default. Part of that, because say where I am in England, you know, black people only make 3% of the population, the majority lion's share are white. So you don't really have to think about whiteness. It's more of an abstract idea. But I've had to think about my blackness pretty much every day of my life. So I think, you know, many people who are black. So I think not seeing color almost makes it seem like as though it's a nice gesture that we're invisible, or you're overlooking the stumbling block. I've had people say to me in the past, not my family, "Oh, you're all right, Tone." The subtext meaning that you're black, you're not like the other black people that we not too sure about. You're one of us because we like you and we know what you're about.
Yeah. And I had that growing up, and this is, you know, we're not trying to bring a negative tone. We're just trying to, you know, just share the real stories,
the realism of it.
Yeah, and lots of people don't realise until you start sharing that, wow, that actually happened to you on a daily or weekly basis. But you know, I grew up. My mum's white and my dad's Jamaican. And we was actually Jamaican Irish. Come on now,
that's a good mix,
absolutely. Come on, right? Yeah, it's a strong. So, and that's the bit those are the bits that I know. But so I grew up with my mum. My mum and dad's separate. You know, divorced when I was really young, and both my parents loved me. And but we grew up with my mum, so we grew up where she lived, which happened to be in all white areas. She didn't just choose that; she just chose where to live. It happens to be that. So we actually had to move from one particular housing estate where we lived to another one due to you know, racial situations happening. My mum kept a lot of that from us, but I know that she went through a lot, and I would have names called at me like every day, and people say those same sort of statements, and they're trying to be well-meaning, you know. But have we got any emails?
Yeah, we've just got to take about that.
Sorry, we thought you were just going to stay all night because we're just so into this. But you know,
I was having fun as well.
Yeah.
I know.
Tony, it's been lovely to meet you, it really has, and I hope we'll get to meet again, and just been really great to hear an insight from your perspective, and again, I think we said earlier, because you know, I'm white, you're black, you know, we can all see that.
Really?
But the thing is, you know, big revelation. The thing is, you said something to me off air which really spoke to me. I'm from a working class background, council estate, and so are you. We've probably got more in common than others who maybe gone to Eton and places. So I think that really speaks volumes to me when he said that to me earlier.
Yeah. I think that's, you know what?
We're brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters here.
Absolutely, and this is what is so great, that we can just share, and we know that, you know, it's the Lord that's brought us together. That's one of the things, you know, outside of the situation that that I love to say, that I would never have met so many different types of people if it wasn't for Jesus. But Tony, we're gonna let you go. We don't want to.
But Coconut Prince, please check out my website triberedeemed.org and my Facebook page, and we stream, me and my wife Jolene, every Sunday on Facebook. We have a church meeting.
Brilliant.
You can check it out on our page.
Yeah.
Plug.
Lovely.
Tony, check out my church on Facebook and all.
I will do. We'll do a trade. How about that?
Cheers, Tony.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
God bless.
Lots of love.
Mate.
Say hi
Thank
to Jolene. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Oh, wow.
Got some emails. Do you want some emails?
I'm sure you have.
This is from Helen Whelan. Dear sister and brother in Christ, I'm not sure if I'm going off topic, but I need some advice from you. We'll come back to that one in a minute because it is a little bit off topic, Helen. So I'll respond to that email later on. Let's go to Judith Davies. Hi, on the subject of being discussed, can I ask why it always seems to be black and white? I'm saying there's so much more emphasis on these two colours. I think the reason tonight is because of what's going on in the world at the moment. It's just that it's very much in the news, but I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah. I have friends who are Pakistani Christians trying to run an orphanage, and they are being marginalised by Pakistani Muslims. So we're not saying it isn't an issue in other races as well. And I remember in the church in Coventry, I had a girl who was from Pakistani origin, and she'd literally climb out of a window to come to the Christian youth group at night time. So it is, I know it's a far bigger topic than just what we're looking at tonight. We're not going to be able to cover all of it. It's the nature of the show. Yeah. We've got one from Shireen here. Hi, both. There's Institute... Oh, excuse me, bit my tongue. That's not good, is it, on live television?
I should have laughed, sorry.
Yeah. I'm offended that you laughed at that. No. Hi, both. There's institutional racism. That's going to go on the outtakes. Yeah. Everywhere my two sons went to private school, but there also is a hidden racism, being Asian. They called their name, even in the NHS. They face racism many times, which is unbelievable. Some patients demand they don't want to see coloured doctors. Thanks. That's from Shireen. Alan White, long email. These emails are really long, but thank you, guys. Hi, guys and gals. Hi, I've not seen you guys before on Rev TV. That's okay. Oh, where were you? Yeah. Where have you been the last few weeks? Anyway, I have to say I'm very concerned about with what has happened recently, both with the horrible death of George Floyd and the protests that led to the riots in the US. It's a massive long email, but... thank you for your email there. There's quite a few coming in, but I know we've got some other things to... Actually,
no, I was just going to say I'm really glad for that email because obviously, you know, we're able to address the George Floyd situation. And I just want to go to... I've actually got a clip that I think really speaks to the heart of it, and we've got Joni Erickson Tada, and she's just sharing her heart, having watched what happened and just how the Lord has spoke to her. And I think watch it and let us know what you think in regards to this, because I think what she says really hits the nail on the head, and what our heart response should be. Let's have a look.
Open through the watches of the night. Actually, that's from Psalm 119. And I wasn't only awake from pain, I kept thinking about the brutal suffocation of an African-American man last week, as well as the brutal shooting of a white police officer yesterday in Las Vegas. And I just could not sleep. This morning, when I got up and wheeled into our kitchen, my Bible was open on the table. And I noticed it was open to Psalms. So the first thing my eyes fell on was Psalm 120 there on the page. And it read, quote, "In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me." And with emotion rising from the night before, I started crying out to the Lord, as it were. I wailed. I was sitting there crying, calling out on behalf of our nation and for its broken people. And aren't we all heartbroken by these tragic events unfolding? I mean, I'm a praying person. And Johnny and Friends is a praying ministry, but this requires much more than casual prayer, if there is such a thing. God's looking for deep supplication. He's looking for travailing. He's looking for pleading, beseeching, imploring, mourning, wailing before the throne of God for the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, to intervene mercifully. Jesus, intervene, that we might humbly seek his face and turn from wickedness, whether self-righteous anger in our streets or the wickedness of self-righteous pride in our hearts. May we mourn our sin. May we mourn our nation, beg for God's mercy. And may I ask you to be open to the views of others. Step into their stories, would you? Step into their pain. Listen and take their needs before God in prayer. We need unity desperately. Let me know that you affirm this. Let's hear from you today. And if you would like to share your story, Your Johnny and Friends team and I are listening. So please bear with my drippy nose and my swollen eyes and my sackcloth and ashes demeanor here. Only please join me in crying out, travailing before our Savior, because he is our nation's only.
Wow, what a plea!
Yeah.
And you know, you can just
feeling it, aren't we? At the
yeah,
moment?
I mean, you can just feel her heart, and I really think that is the heart that we want to have, the heart of the Lord. You know, we want to hear from you. I know we've got a little bit more time for the program, but you know, what do you feel after just, you know, watching that and how Joni's felt? You know, does that touch a chord with you? Does that make you view things differently? You know, let us know how you feel about that, because I think that's what we need to get into actually, is more travail, and actually not looking over this, but say that I think God has blown the cover off of this and wants us to look, because this is going to change the dynamic of, you know, we're coming out of COVID, we want to bring people in, and I believe that God is saying, okay, we need to look at these deeper things for a real revival to start to come and flow.
For me, getting to the bottom line is, what does Jesus do in these situations? And he's across the border in Samaria, speaking to the Samaritan woman.
That's right.
He's breaking every single rule of the day and going out and reaching out to people, because we go back, don't we, to that verse that we love so much, for God so loved the world.
Yeah.
And when we say God so loved you, that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And that whosoever is a whosoever from any country in the world.
That's right. And he's able to change our hearts, and that is what is so beautiful. Whatever the heart is, whatever the sin is, that God is able to change us, and that's what repentance is. It's a change of mind about the way that we used to think about something, the way we used to think about Jesus, and the way we used to think about things before we met Jesus. He now changes, so where we're indifferent, we start to have empathy, we start to have a response, you know, like Joni.
Yeah, and maybe even before you became a Christian, you may have had racist views, and you may have had prejudiced views towards people. And when Christ melts your heart and he gives you a love for people, love for the last, the lost, and the least.
Oh, that's good.
See, there's a sermon in there.
That's the last.
I've got some emails.
Got some emails, yeah.
So this is from Gillian Rowles, I think. A mature church is black and white, rich or poor, old and young, different politics. This is what an old wise pastor told me once. Absolutely. But I think we have all black churches and all white churches. Just means we are safe in our comfort zones. It doesn't mean that we are racist. And I think that's what they were saying earlier. If we just tend to hang around, like attracts like sometimes, that's kind of natural. But I do know a local black church that actually told two white ladies, this is a black church. I think the whole narrative about racism recently is causing a gulf. We can have all the debates and committees to look into this problem, but only Jesus can change men's hearts, was what we said earlier. Right. And I saw recently on social media of a black pastor being turned down for a job because this church is too white for you. So the church really shouldn't be kind of... we've had a few emails, people saying, you know, why are we talking about this when there's a coronavirus going on? Listen, I believe that if the church isn't leading the discussion on this, then somebody else will. And we've got the word of God in our place. Right. So that's the thing.
And I would even say that this is not to downplay the coronavirus, but this is a virus that's been happening before the coronavirus and will continue beyond the coronavirus. So I think that we need to look at both of those things. And like what we said at the beginning of the show, this is a very difficult topic, and it's like being on a roller coaster where you know there's going to be some ups and downs, and it's not going to be all straight sailing, but you know, if we're willing to, you know, go through the ride together, we will come out the other side. Yeah, please.
Hi, presenter. Surely the lack of specific groups not represented in matters of the church is the fault of the leaders. Every single one of us has a skill or talent and needs to be discovered. Paul said that everyone in the church should be given a job and so feel part of the fellowship. It's a common problem in a lot of churches, but the quiet ones in the pews should be encouraged to contribute. Blessings, Duncan in Inverness, up there in Scotland. Also we've had Brian messaging as well. I think ethnicity or racism has always existed, similar to religious differences. Why are we hearing about racism so much at present from the corporate media by further stirring things up? One reason is to cause division and chaos. This also helps divert the attention away from what's happening with the COVID crisis. I see what you're saying, but I think there's been quite a lot of COVID stuff in the media this week as well. So, but I mean, we're tackling this topic tonight. Next week we'll be doing something else. You know, it's not something that we're completely focusing on all the time, but it's something that we felt would be right to do tonight. So, I've got another 4 emails coming in now. So I'll leave it to you. You're the anchor.
Yeah. Okay. More email. Go ahead with the emails. I want to hear from you guys.
That one's for Breeder and Cyril. Do we look like Breeder and Cyril? Yeah. I can't do Cyril's accent. Hi folks, please spare a thought for Tony Timper, a white man who died when a US police officer put his knee on his neck last year. No one has noticed his death. Injustice is injustice, isn't it? Whoever it is, you know. And just because we're talking about racism doesn't mean that we're not realising that, as we've already alluded to tonight, that there is a class issue here as well, that sometimes people who are in a lower class are being overlooked, and Tony brought that up himself. You know, that's so much part of the problem as well. That one's not got anything on it. Natalie, hi both, really enjoying the show and the points being put across, and big thumbs up to how you are both presenting the show. God bless you both. Keep talking. That's from Natalie in Cardiff. Natalie, that £20 is in the post. Okay, for that compliment. Pray for the police from Caroline. It's heartbreaking what's happening with George Floyd, and my heart goes out for all the family and others who had to endure this. I also forgot to request we pray for law enforcement. They themselves going through a lot of pain right now, and some has to call off sick. Yeah, again, you know, there's no winners in this situation at all, is it? At all, and we realise that as well. Can I just say this quickly, Simone? Because I was doing my radio show this week on TRE, and as I'm trying to keep light and entertain people in Spain, on the Sky News, we had the Sky News screens. In front of me was a family of another guy who was a black guy in a car, and not sure the circumstances, but he was at a drive-through, and the police were called, and they did like a test on him, breath test and so on. And then he struggles. I don't know if you saw it, but the police shoot him dead. And I thought at that moment there, I thought, if that had been the UK, he may have got away, but the police would have caught him later. If he'd done something wrong, then he deserves to be punished. And yet, there's no going back now. I saw this family with the kids on the telly crying, the loss of dad. And I thought, there needs to be wholesale change in the way in which that happens. That you can't just shoot people dead. And I know the police have been fired for that, but anyway, that was something really got to me. That did, you know.
I think the thing is that, like what we're saying, you know, we're just touching, you know, on this topic, and you know, God wants to celebrate, you know, who he's made us to be, and there's going to be the world's narrative, there's going to be the world media narrative, but we want to make sure that our narrative is God's narrative. And I think even in Peter in Acts chapter 10, when God calls him, you know, to Cornelius's house, you know, it was, you know, completely out of his, you know, his remit, and he had to rethink how he thought about Cornelius, and someone who wasn't like him, someone who was a non-Jew, you know, where the sheet comes down in the vision, and the Lord says, don't call what I've made clean unclean, you know. So Peter's way of thinking was challenged, and we see that, you know, in another scripture when he tries to pretend that he's not with his Greek friends, you know. So, you know, God puts this in his word for us to plainly see. So tonight, guys, we're so glad that you've written in. You know, we want to get through as many things as possible, but we're going to leave you with this song tonight, and I think this song describes everything. It's by Mandisa, and you know, it just says everything. So we just hope that you've enjoyed the show tonight, and we've tried to cover as many things. But be blessed. God loves you. God loves us, and let's be part of the solution, the recovery, and just enjoy this song, guys, because it says everything that we want to say. Good night. Thank you so much. So basically,
also, can I just say as well before we finish, we've had lots of emails coming in last minute here, and that's great, and we're not going to get through them all, but do email us again next week, and it'd be great to hear from you as well, because we'll be back next Thursday. So we're looking forward to that here on the Late Show.
Next Thursday. And guys, have a great rest of the week, and God bless. Bye now.